Hello. Thank you for joining us, whether it's the morning or the evening, the afternoon, whether you're in the United States or somewhere else in the world. And thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I am Tim Sohn with Sohn Social Media Solutions, where we help businesses and entrepreneurs create their message and get it out there, especially through live video. And I'm so excited to be here today with our guest and my trusty co-host, Jim. Take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jim Fuse of Fusion Marketing, and we're excited to have Michelle Garrett, who I've been following for a while on Twitter, and we connected. A lot of times Twitter leads to LinkedIn, leads to Facebook. Michelle Garrett of Garrett Public Relations is a public relation expert. So we're going to be talking to her today about how to use public relations to market and promote your business, because I think, Tim and I tend to be looked at as social media folks, and sometimes people try to say PR and social media are one and the same, and we know they're not.
Right.
And I think a lot of companies struggle. So Michelle, I know you're from Columbus, Ohio. You're an Ohio State grad, and like I was joking with you before the show, Chase Young is now a Washington Redskin. So Ohio State's been giving us a couple good players, keeping our fingers crossed when football
Yeah.
comes back. So tell us about yourself, Michelle.
Well, gosh, where to start? I am a native Ohioan. I lived out in the Bay Area for a number of years as well. So I launched my business out there, and my background is in technology. I have a journalism degree with a PR concentration, and just have always loved writing. Have always loved trying to get my clients kind of on the map, get the word out about them. I currently consult with clients on public relations, writing, social media, content development. I write blogs, contributed articles. Ghostwriting is becoming a bigger part of my business, so that's an interesting turn.
And what is ghostwriting?
Well, I define it as writing for an executive or writing for someone who has ideas that they want to share but does not have time to write them down themselves. So sometimes they will share, an outline or some thoughts, and then I will do some research and just flesh it out for them. Other times I do interviews and then write for them, but it does not have my name on it. It would have the executive's name on it. So that's the ghost part of it.
And I was actually surprised. I think there's a lot more ghostwriters than we realize sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to need one of those because I know I struggle with writing. I have lots of ideas, just like Tim, but it's like finding the time to write. That's a whole nother story. So Tim, you want to start us off with question 1 for Michelle?
Absolutely. And before we dive right into that, we want to thank everybody again for tuning in. Thank you for spending time with us. Please let us know if you have any questions as we roll along here about public relations and your business. And we would appreciate if you also subscribe to the Tim and Jim Show YouTube channel. Every time we go live, you'll get a notification, and it's a great way to check out our archives as well to see our previous shows. But let's dive right in. So question number 1 is, if your business wants to start a PR effort, how should you begin? And perhaps also, why should you begin?
Well, I guess the why is that PR is a very, it can be a cost-effective way to get the word out about your business. Of course, there's advertising, and many people confuse the two, and there are all kinds of other marketing tactics, and sometimes PR will kind of dovetail into a lot of those. But PR is not advertising. This is when I give talks, kind of PR 101 talks, I always start with a definition of each, because I think a lot of people are confused. A lot of people don't understand what PR is. They don't really know what it is. And so, one aspect that most clients want is to get their name out, so there are a lot of other things that PR pros do. Crisis communications is one that's kept me very busy the past month or so. But yeah, the kind of, one of the meat and potatoes pieces of PR is media relations. So it's just a very cost-effective way, and it's credible, as opposed to an ad that you would pay for, which is going to show up on Tuesday. It's going to say X, Y, and Z. With PR, you don't know what the article is going to say, but it is written by a journalist who, in many cases, we hope would, have some credibility. It would be an outside party talking about you as opposed to you just talking about yourself. And so I think there's a lot of value in that for companies.
And Michelle, I would imagine right now with all that's going on with the pandemic going on, I would imagine there's an opportunity there for brands to I don't know if take the advantage is the right word,
Right.
but to, especially if they're doing anything specific, they're offering something for free, maybe they're accepting donations, something like that. Would you agree with that?
I would. I think you have to be careful. I've
Of
written
course.
some about it and talked to a lot of folks about it. I mean, there's a lot out there right now about how to do it right. I think, a lot of what we're doing with communications around the virus is just kind of maybe if we don't have anything to contribute as far as, the medical side of things, which most people do not, I would say just avoid that entirely. Now you will need to communicate, what your business is doing. If you have a brick and mortar business, that's a huge issue. So, I've gotten, for example, a lot of communications from Target, and they just share what we're doing to keep our employees safe, what we're doing to keep our customers safe. You can order online, we ship for free at a certain point, and just things like that. I think that's fine to share. And then outside of that, I think there's some fatigue around, everything is about the virus, and it's not to downplay it in any way, but I think we all need a break. If you immerse yourself in that 24/7, you're just gonna, you're either gonna get kind of like turned off by just totally you just kind of, it desensitizes you, or you're going to just stress yourself out. And I think that we need content and stories that are about other things too.
No, I think that's a great point, Michelle. I think, in general, we have to be getting prepared for how we all are going to operate, whether it's as businesses, families, and whatever. And that really needs to become more of the conversation. It's the elephant in the room. We know it's there, but to keep talking about it, not taking action. And so I think even I've seen where, for me, and I people say, oh, well, no one's opening my email, because so many of our emails now, right? Almost every email is like, COVID this, COVID that. And I think you're right. It's like, you haven't communicated with me in 3 years, and now you want to talk to me about my financial plan during COVID. It's like, okay, but how about we just have a conversation? So I think that's a great point. And so I
Mhm.
think, so say for some of like, especially myself as a small business, I know some of it is like, connect with those folks in the, I guess you'd say, in the media industry that might want
Mhm.
to share your story. Do you think like some of that is like, would you say is Twitter? I know that's how we met. Is Twitter a
Yeah.
good place to start that?
To share your story?
Yes, or just
I
to
mean,
connect. I mean,
oh
you don't want
yeah.
to just automatically
Yeah.
like, hey, publish my stuff.
Yes, no, that's a mistake. Just like you're trying to sell your stuff, like, "Here, you buy my stuff," that's the
Right.
wrong way to go about it. I think relationship building is so important, and that's one thing everybody, every company can do right now is engage and actually have conversations with people, be it on Twitter or other social media outlets. I mean, Twitter is kind of my preferred channel. And of course, I love LinkedIn too, but yeah, I think that that's a really important point. The other thing about Twitter is a lot of journalists use Twitter, and a lot of them look for story ideas and sources on Twitter. So if you're out there actively sharing thoughts and opinions and talking about trends, for example, sometimes that can lead to media coverage right there. And sometimes your tweet gets picked up, and without you even knowing it, I've seen that happen before too, where clients will just end up on a story, and we didn't ever talked to a reporter, but they saw what they were saying and they included it in there. So I don't see, how a downside to that, and I only see a positive on that point. So
Right. No, that's excellent. So I guess our next question would be, how does social media and content play a role in public relations?
I mean, I really see it as all connected. I started out, of course, writing PR, marketing for many, many years, marketing communications, internal communications. And of course, now social media came along, more recently. Now it's not brand new, but it is more recent. And then content marketing has just be kind of become almost, I don't want to call it a buzzword, but I mean, content marketing is kind of what PR people have been doing for a long time. So I think we know that world. We know how to write, we know how to craft stories and ideas, and we know how to communicate. And so I think that those things are all connected, and all three of those initiatives: PR, social media, content marketing. And the other thing is that a lot of things that you do can be leveraged and repurposed in a number of different ways. For example, if you write a blog post, you might be able to turn that into a press release, or you might be able to pitch that idea to a journalist and get a earned media story out of it. And then you might be able to share that, the blog post and the story, on social media. So you see how that all kind of fits together. It's a very cost-effective way to use your marketing budget. You get a lot of bang out of your buck, and it's repurposable, which I love, because once you create a piece of content, who doesn't want to make the most of it? So.
Right. Tim, you have any thoughts on that? Because I know that's, a lot of your background, like we've talked about before, that you started out in journalism. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses don't realize the opportunity, even if you're a local business, and say you have a 5-year anniversary coming up, or you have some sort of new product or service, or something new is really the main thing, right? And just sending a press release out to your local newspaper. I used to work in journalism, like Jim said, and unfortunately, a lot of the newspaper industry has consolidated and things like that. But there's still, because of those lack of resources, I find that it's easier nowadays to get into local media outlets, especially if it's something new, or you're celebrating some sort of anniversary. What do you think, Michelle?
I mean, I think that's definitely one avenue, and it's kind of what I call the lower hanging fruit. I do try to get clients to think outside of that, because, for example, here in Columbus, we only have a limited number of media outlets. So if you're going to do PR and reach out to your papers, and we have a magazine or two, and a couple broadcasts, three or four broadcast outlets, but I mean, they're not going to be that much. So of course, they're only going to cover you maybe once a year or once in a while. Or, I mean, if you have a really big piece of news, like a merger or acquisition, something, they might make an exception. But I think that another place that I like to talk about and send clients, try to get clients to pursue, is vertical media, industry publications, because every industry has those, and they are always looking for stories and sources, and a lot of them take contributed articles, which means you can write a story, you can pitch an idea, write the story. You cannot talk about yourself. That's not the way we do that. That's advertising or advertorials. Those are, yes, they're fine, but not the same thing. And then, of course, but your name will be associated with it, a link to your site, and your name as the author, and sometimes a little bio, a little blurb about your company or you, or however you want to do that, if you're personal branding or branding for your company. But yeah, I think local media, industry media, everybody talks about the Wall Street Journal or TechCrunch, or that's not the only game in town. And obviously you should never start out thinking, I'm going to be in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow, because it's not realistic, I don't think, for most companies.
And Tim Lewis brings up an interesting comment as well. He says he thinks most people produce too much content and don't reuse it enough. I mean, do you see that as one of the mistakes that folks are making as well?
Yes, because if you post a blog post, I know there's statistics on this, and I don't know off the top of my head, but sometimes no one sees it. So, I mean, that's a sad, how many hours did you spend? Maybe, I mean, some people spend 5 to 10 hours, depending on the length, if it's a long form post with images and research. And I mean, it could be hours and hours of time, and think about what a waste that is. So what other things can you do with it? That, I think that's always a good way to be thinking about it. I mean, and for example, with the podcast and the video, I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do. You could pull quotes and share those on social media. You could turn that into a blog post. It's just, it's almost like, if you start thinking about it, making a list, there's a lot of possibilities, and I don't think people scratch the surface. Sometimes they just say, okay, it's in the can, it's all done, right, and here it is, and like nobody sees it, and what good does it do then? So,
well, right, and it's almost like we all think like there's this checklist, like, oh, if you just follow these steps,
Mhm.
you're going to have instant success, and it's a lot more work than that. You know,
Mm.
like this is a lot of work for Tim Sohn, but you know, how can Tim Sohn become a Dunkin' ambassador? Because he's
Cheers.
constantly
Oh,
promoting Dunkin' Donuts, and they just don't seem to respond. So Dunkin', wherever you are, make sure you guys you got Tim loves Dunkin'. He never talks about that place with the S. So I'll
oh, I was gonna say, I miss that place, but
yeah.
Yeah, Tim and Tim, remind us who Tim has started a live streaming show with 2 other people as well. So Tim, put that information down below in the comments,
Yeah, I think
so
it's
people
called
can check out your.
another live streaming show or something funny like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So
Yeah.
it's
yeah.
a good time to start something, right? I mean, a lot of people have extra time, or at least they don't have a commute, maybe, so they have an hour or so extra a day. I don't know. I've been very busy, but I know a lot
Yes.
of people are in different places. So
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's go to the next question. And that
Mhm.
would be, Michelle, what other PR initiatives can you undertake once you get started? And I guess, like, how do we get started in general? You know,
Mhm.
if we're a business that hasn't really dove in, and is this as good a time as any to get started?
I think it's always a good time, right? But I think I don't think you should allow the current environment to discourage you. I mean, and if you have time to work on it now, I think it can be a fine time. But my bottom line is, if you have a story that's newsworthy, that's always going to be of interest if you get it to the right reporter. So it's two pieces. It's, is it a good story? Is it newsworthy? And then have you targeted to the right media outlet, the right reporter? Those are always the two most vital pieces of reaching out to the media, in my opinion. And Tim, you may add.
No, I agree. It always helps if you have a contact or like use tools like LinkedIn and Twitter to.
Mhm.
I think it also helps to engage with if there's outlets that you're hoping to get in on a frequent basis, or even for a specific project, to engage with specific reporters or managing editors or whatever the role is, right, Michelle?
Right. And in your industry, you should get to know those publications and those editors, because I mean, I can tell you for sure that that makes a big difference. And once you get those relationships established, sometimes they'll call on you. You don't even have to necessarily reach out to them. They'll email and say, "I'm working on a story about blah blah. Can you contribute, a quote, or can you send us an image, or talk about your new product, or whatever it is?" So I think that that's now the one way to do that is going to trade shows, because a lot of reporters go to trade shows. Now, right now, we can't do that, but we can certainly follow them, engage with them. And the other thing is, engage with them when it doesn't have anything to do with you or what you're trying to get out of the engagement, right? So the best time to engage with a reporter or publication is when you don't need anything from them. You just start kind of liking their stories, sharing their stories, maybe having a little banter with them. Reporters do. They're people, they will talk to you about things. And I have a lot of Twitter exchanges with reporters that have nothing to do with my clients or news that I'm pitching. It's just, we're just talking, we're just chatting. So it's just good to keep those relationships, kind of foster those. And then when you do need somebody, you do need something, you don't feel as funny about going to them and saying, "Hey, we do have, an announcement coming up. Would you be interested?" So
Right.
yeah.
And Gail Robertson is over on LinkedIn, and she says hello, and she's another person that we've all connected with through Twitter. So
And
Yeah.
also Nina is watching over on LinkedIn, and Rabinder, who has an organization called Imagine India. He's in India. He's in
Oh,
my live streaming program, and he's launching his own show soon called Good Morning Cosmos.
wow.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So thank you for joining us
yeah,
all.
Gail says also, so true, Michelle, as in life and building relationship in all areas of life. And I think yeah, that's really where I think I know I've created some like Twitter list where I follow, like I follow Michelle and other PR experts so that I can see what they're doing. And I think that's the power of, you can even just sharing other people's content,
Mhm.
especially when it's experts like Michelle in the PR world, because there's just things you don't think of. And I also subscribe to her newsletter. We also have a comment from Karen Rice, and this goes back to what
Okay.
we said something earlier, right? The people are being fatigued with too much of the COVID-19 overload. And, people are tired of hearing the phrase, right, in these uncertain times, because in some aspects, aren't times always uncertain?
Yes, true. We were just talking about that on Twitter this morning. I'm like, can we just stop with with some of these words we hear over and over again? It's like, oh, please, we're here for you. We're in this together. It's like, okay, we get it, but what can we really, what do you really have to bring to the table that's maybe going to help me, or, just get my mind distracted. I mean, we need distractions. I mean, there's a lot of really terrible news, and we really need to be maybe focusing on other things. We can't immerse ourselves in that all day.
Right. And I've look at it almost daily. I probably should take more action. I think another great tool is help a reporter out. I think people forget
Mhm.
about Harrow, and it's free to
Mhm.
subscribe to, and you
Mhm.
get that opportunity to see, even give you ideas of what people can be looking for, that maybe you can even produce some content that will get interest. Is that something that you use a lot, Michelle?
I do. I used it more previously. I do think it's a good free resource. Let me just start with that. However, you do have to be careful because some of them are anonymous, and that sometimes I've seen people, I think, that are just fishing for like you to share. One time somebody asked me for examples, for me to send examples of some work that I had done. And I thought, well, okay, they wouldn't tell me what outlet they were with and why they were wanting them. I think it was not a real reporter request. So I would just say, yes, there is a lot of good stuff on there, but be careful when you evaluate each opportunity.
I thought that was a person called Any Mouse. I didn't know it was anonymous.
Well, I
Well,
don't
I
know.
guess I learned something new every day. That's a Marine in me. Yeah, and Gail also says another one is unprecedented, is another one of the big
Yeah, oh yeah, we started making a list. Somebody needs to publish a story about this and make a list. I'm sure there probably is one out there somewhere, but it's like, how else do you say it? Because I have used just uncertainty. I mean, and to me, that is the biggest issue as far as businesses go. It's like, we just don't know, or just being a person, it's like, how do we know what July or August or September? We don't know. I mean, we just don't know. So I don't know how we're going to get around uncertain, but
right.
Yeah.
I get it.
And yeah, and Tim Lewis says, and he's over in England. He says in the UK they use the hashtag PR request hashtag is something, and that's another good point, right? If you follow or even search by hashtags, you may find some of those things that people are looking for. Tim, what are some of the initiatives that you think people could take, especially with your background? What are things that maybe you're helping some of your clients do?
Well, I'm focusing a lot on live streaming right now with my clients. And I think right now is a great time, as many of us are at home, to really hone our live streaming skills, because it establishes you as as an authority figure in your industry. One of the things I love to do, well, right here we have the Tim and Jim show. We bring on guests every week, and I really love that format because not only do the great thing about it is that you also hopefully your guest will share the show, more people will see the show, you'll build more relationships that way, and plus you get to build relationships with your guests, right? Other leaders in your industry. So I've been focusing a lot on live streaming with my clients, and even just getting them past the fear of being on video, and then also launching their own show in the long run.
You mean that's a fear? Yeah. That's what I said when
it's
Jim
an unprecedented
asked me,
fear.
I was like,
Oh,
video? There's not video. See, on podcasts, you don't have to worry about the video aspect, but this is, it is different, and not everybody is comfortable. So, yeah.
True.
Oh, here's another good one. So we should now be referring to you as Duncan Tim. and you know what? Maybe that should be your LinkedIn hashtag instead of Tim's Tips. Duncan Tim. There's a thought.
It would be more memorable for sure than my current one. And thank you, Tim, for your Duncan comments. I always show up on their show and I make Duncan comments or that S Place comments all the time. So appreciate the reciprocation, Tim.
Michelle, so we talked like Haro, like you said, is free. And of
Mhm,
course, like you
mhm,
said, a couple of the pros and cons. What's kind of the next step beyond Haro that maybe a company might want to look at?
Well, I just kind of backing up to the beginning, I would say again, figure out first of all, kind of sit down and make a list of what you have to talk about that's newsworthy. So it could be, to Tim's point, an anniversary, could be you hired a new CEO, could be you moved to a new location, could be you have a new product or something, or a new partnership, something like that. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you could talk about. And then even look at trends in your industry. What could you maybe write contributed articles about that don't necessarily, call out your product, but, give your perspective on a current trend in your industry. Those are really great for contributed articles. And then I would look at building the media list. Maybe start and have different tabs on your Excel spreadsheet. For example, have one for local, have one for industry, have one for business reporters or blogs, or whatever it is, podcasts. That's one area that I think the media databases need to work on, because it is so hard to like come up with if your clients want to be on podcasts, there's like not a comprehensive list anywhere that I have known about, and I've asked around, and I don't think anybody's really come up with that yet. So just a searchable database, for example, like Meltwater is a tool that I use to find opportunities for clients or find media outlets, but I don't really think they have a lot of podcasts in there right now. So that's just an area I think that needs a little bit of fleshing out. But
That's a
anyway,
great
yeah.
point. Yeah, because and I would even say, even aside from podcasts, right, Tim? I mean, we talk about every once in a while, like even live streaming shows, right? When we've
Mhm,
asked people before, like, how many people do you know that like have, say, a format like Tim and I, where there's
mhm,
two co-hosts, and we have to really think about it hard. It's like, well, we know a handful, but we can't say like, oh, I know these 20
mhm.
shows in a co-host format, and this is the subject. That's a great idea for maybe someone that has a lot of time. Oh, and here we have another comment here from
Uh-oh.
Karen. Um, Thinking of promoting different local businesses with offering gift cards to my Facebook followers, mentioning something memorable or interesting about the business. For instance, my daughter's employer is paying their employees since they shut down. I'd like to use that to get more interest in their business locally and help others at the same time.
I mean, that could be an idea.
Yeah, and so do you think that would be, because I've seen that actually seems to be something a lot of people are doing, is this whole
Mhm,
idea of buy a gift card to support a local business.
mhm,
I think where I've seen some of these associations, and by that meaning business associations, struggle is maybe they need to do more PR about their own members.
mhm,
Right, they're just not saying anything, they're just there, and we had, Christopher Knight last week we had a great episode with him talking about how he's doing that with the chamber,
mhm,
that he's involved with, but you don't see enough of that, I think. It's like everybody's waiting for something. I'm
mhm.
not sure what, waiting for Tim to be the Duncan spokesman.
No, but I've had I'm in a chamber, and I think there's a huge opportunity for chambers. I've
Mhm,
seen many chambers that they're just sending out emails every time that they get something from the Small Business Administration or something from the federal government, and they just
mhm.
kind of like copy and paste it and throw it in an email and send it to you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Are you
Having
seeing
been
that?
the president of an association in the communications industry, I think highlighting our members was a column that we had in every newsletter, and that was back when we had a print version, we've and an email version. But I mean, that's something that's coming back too, by the way, print in some cases, because people are tired of looking at email. But I still
yeah.
say email newsletters are great. And yes, I think it's great to highlight customers, highlight members, highlight the people that make your business or your organization thrive and make it interesting. I mean, what is more interesting than learning about another business in your chamber, or something, a member in your association? You don't know where they're from, or don't know where they went to school, or that they have, kids, or I mean, they have a hobby, they skydive or whatever. I mean, just there's a lot of, everybody has a story, right? And everybody likes to tell their story, and everybody likes to see their name in print or online or wherever it is. So I mean, I think that's a great idea.
And Chris Stone, who's a good friend of mine here, he's over watching us on YouTube, says, and he's a podcast expert. He helps people start podcasts. Basic data is available for free. More specialized data is at a premium. So, Chris, we would love if you could share in the comments maybe a couple of those locations, because I do think a lot of it kind of goes right. Michelle knows this stuff about PR that she probably has forgotten more than any of us know, and Chris is the same with podcasts. So, yeah, if you can share those sources, that would be amazing.
Yeah, because somebody told me to be on podcasting, you should listen to the ones that you want to be on. But of course, if a client comes to you and says, I want to be on podcasts, they may not know which ones, or just like media outlets, they don't read every magazine or publication or blog, or they don't, no one has time for that, honestly. But I mean, obviously doing research is one way to go about it, but I would love to hear resources.
Right. And thank you, Gail, for subscribing to us on YouTube. She says we got a lot of great content out there. And good morning to our friend Marissa Callie from All the Social. She's out on California. So this is truly an international episode today. So we always love when we get all our friends. And so she wanted to know the difference between PR and marketing strategy.
Well, usually the PR strategy, and a lot of my PR friends would not want to hear me say this, but it'll fall under the marketing strategy. So for example, when I worked with teams at Adobe and HP, we sit in the big meetings where we're launching products, and PR would have one piece of that, spreadsheet or that launch plan or whatever it is. So then you would have your own, action items underneath your tab of the effort. So I think it kind of rolls up into a larger marketing strategy, but it should be factored in and can be factored into a lot of things that fall under marketing. And I think that, again, with the writing and communication skills, that good writing indicates clear thinking. And a lot of PR pros went to journalism school. And so they have that skill set. And so I think that that's a really valuable, member of your team that you should be pulling in. And executives the same way for communications. They got stuck in a really tough spot here, 6 or so weeks ago. And this kind of came up very quickly. And so a lot of them were struggling with, what do we say? How do we communicate? So, you definitely want to be looking to your PR folks, your PR team for that counsel.
I mean, Tim, what are your thoughts? Because I know you deal with this a lot. Because you, especially, like I know sometimes I ask you, because I will definitely say I am not a PR expert in any way, shape, or form, but I always enjoy your insights on this stuff.
Yeah, I think it really overlaps, right? Like, the goal of it all is, to get your message out, right? Whether you're on social media or you're in a press release or you're some sort of partnership with somebody, right? So there's really a lot of overlap, right, Michelle?
I think so. I think what kind of irks PR people sometimes, or social media people, is that they get left out. And I mean, you can't leave them out, I mean, and the other thing is, I think there's like a fear of stepping on toes or, whatever, but I think you can work together, just figure out who owns which piece, because to me, again, PR just goes right in. Social media and PR really shouldn't be split up. And I've written about that before, about siloing those two off, and even the content piece, because I think sometimes there are egos involved. But I mean, honestly, I just feel like we could work together. I mean, and we shouldn't be duplicating efforts, and we shouldn't be leaving out critical pieces of the strategy that, we could all talk about together and map it out, and everybody could, have a hand in it, and it could work a lot better.
That's right. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Love that.
Let's see. And so, okay, I like this comment from Tim Lewis. The other Tim, not the Duncan Tim. To me, PR is active, approaching other people, while marketing tends to be more passive.
Well, I mean, I think marketing could be active too. It depends on if you're inbound, outbound. I mean, like there's a whole different, they're all different types of, there's so many things that fall under marketing. I think that's where, people get confused. And with PR, there's even more confusion. But I mean, to me, PR is, advertising, you're paying for it. PR, in theory, you are not paying for that article. And this is something that's come up more recently too, that I've also written about, is that I get email from PR people who say they can get you in X publications for X number of dollars. No, that's not PR anymore. I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay for any media. I'm not saying that at all, but you should not put it under the guise of earned media, which PR at its heart it's earned media. You don't pay for that space. If you show up in that story, I know Forbes does this a lot, so you have to be really careful about that, because there's nobody minding the story over there. People are paying thousands of dollars to get, their articles up there, but nobody's editing, nobody's looking at that, nobody's overseeing it. So I just, use care. If a PR person approaches you and says, you can pay us and we'll guarantee that, you'll get coverage. I mean, maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah. And we have a question from Ravinder over on LinkedIn. He says, what is the interest that you are seeing in companies, even SMEs, in international business expansion? Is it more or less or same as before COVID?
Well, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, could you say that again? That was a little confusing.
Sure. So he said, what is the interest that you are seeing in companies in international business expansion? Is it more or less or same as before what's going on right now?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that or not. I mean, I see a lot of interest in PR and communications. I've seen just a huge, current clients and new clients both coming and saying, people all over the world, companies all over the world trying to, right now we have a captive audience. Again, not to make light in any way, but people are at home. They are maybe have more time on their hands to be looking at stuff online. So it's the exact wrong time to pull back on your marketing, PR, social media budget. This is the time to be, out there in a sensitive way, but also be positioning yourself for when things start to pick up again, which some people think, some economists or some experts think will be, when it picks up, it'll be picking up pretty quickly, because demand was not lost. Demand was there. That was not the reason for the pullback. So.
Excellent. So we're going to wrap this week's show up, and thank you so much, Michelle, for everything that you've given us. And so I've got the best place to connect with you would be LinkedIn, Twitter, or you also have a Facebook page, Garrett Public Relations.
I do. Yes. Yes, I do.
So make sure you follow over there. Any last minute tips, or if there's anything you'd like to share?
Well, I did have a couple of books I was just going to hold up for you. If anybody wants to learn more, this is David Meerman Scott. Let me get this in the right frame here. This is a classic. This is not a new book. It's been updated a few times, but David Meerman Scott is somebody you should definitely follow and connect with on social media. This book is helpful. You can keep it on your desk as a reference. You can, read it cover to cover if you like, but something that, everybody should have if you want to do your own personal branding, your own PR. And another one that I love, and I think writing is really important for everybody, is Everybody Writes by Ann Handley, who is a great person all around. But this book is, also on my desk, and I refer to it. There she is. I refer to it often. So anybody who wants to do PR, personal branding, write a blog, or, social media, I think, those two books could be really helpful. So
that's awesome. And Michelle, if you, I know you have a newsletter. So if you'd like to drop the link for people to subscribe in the comments, we would love to have people follow you and get great public relations information, because I know I always enjoy reading your stuff as well.
And you can subscribe. There's a box there. I should have a dedicated page. But the shoemaker's child, syndrome. On my site, there's a place to sign up, and it's free. And I do tailor it to small businesses primarily. So.
And I just added that in there. So awesome. So Tim, any final thoughts?
Just thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's great having another PR person on the show. You've provided many great tips. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. And we could talk about this all day. I know there were probably a lot of things that we didn't get to, but always happy to answer questions and have conversations on Twitter or wherever people would like to connect.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you all next week. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.